Hey there, this is David Drury, and you're listening to the Not That Kind of Christian podcast. This is where we take on tough topics with heart, humor, and hope. When we think about influencers and social media culture, we usually think of the worst parts of modern life, right? We think of narcissism, vanity, the people that love their own reflection in the mirror a little too much. And we think of a digital world that's shallow, fake, and constantly shouting, hey, look at me. We often assume that to be big online, you got to sell your soul to the algorithm, fake a perfect life, and hide your real struggles. But my guest today is not that kind of Christian. She's racked up millions of followers and literally hundreds of millions of views and lived through the chaos of going viral as a high school kid. Yet she's emerged from that with a message about the dangers of the very platforms that made her well known online, and she's learned to be authentic about her struggles even there. She's the author of the book Influenced, where she pulls back the curtain on the anxiety and reality of the influencer industry, as well as how social media influences all of us. She's trained as a designer with a background in managing media, and she's honest, I think, grounded, and I'm not biased here, but she is my daughter, so maybe a little bit of bias is creeping in here. Welcome to Karina Drury. Welcome to the pod.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Well, I do want to take us all the way back to November 2019. So how old were you back then when you posted this video that went viral?
16.
Wow, just 16 years old. And you were sharing in that video about a health condition that you have called POTS. So maybe explain to us, because that'll give context to thing. What is POTS? How is it affecting you then? And why did you post that video?
POTS is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. It's a type of dysautonomia that makes my nervous system not quite function properly. Sometimes I have fainting episodes, other times it's all sorts of symptoms that affect my autonomic nervous system, low blood pressure, fatigue, and chronic pain, and all sorts of things like that. And in high school, that's when I filmed a video recording what it's like to go through one of those episodes, and I've had it my entire life and managed it my whole life. It was mild as a child, but we were trying to seek answers then, but got a lot worse in my high school years, and that's when I was starting to share online my experience with it and trying to help advocate for other people who have chronic illnesses, whether they have the same chronic illness as me or any other kind of chronic illness that they struggle with on a day-to-day basis.
So put us in your situation back when you're just 16-year-old, you open up this account. Tell us, have you shared videos like this before? And then what was the effect of posting this video, sharing some of this experience having POTS?
I downloaded TikTok, and a friend wanted me to download it and get on the app and see what all the fuss was about. Within a week of me having it, it was my very first video I'd ever posted on TikTok. Overnight, I saw huge success. Almost 100,000 view um, I had almost 100,000 followers within the first week, and I had 20,000,000, 16,000,000 views on the first videos that I made within very first week of me having it.
Yeah, and so you're in a way, uh, y- you know, totally unexpected. You weren't looking for this. But it happens. And, you even talked in your book about your phone felt like it was like overheating with notifications that very night.
Yeah. My family and I were all watching a Christmas movie in the living room, and my phone was just next to me, and it kept buzzing, and the notifications kept going, like, every single second. And now, of course, you just mute all your notifications for the social media apps, and there's no need to be notified for each and every one. But it was constant. It was absolutely constant that my phone started to overheat and get really hot um, in the living room. And my parents and my siblings were like, "What is going on? Who is texting you this much?" or whatever is going on. And I was very confused because I had never had the app before. I didn't know very much about it. And I didn't know if it was real people or real notifications or just kind of like a game when they want you to get back onto the app to spend more time on it. So I just really wasn't sure. Um, but eventually I realized that that was all legitimate and that was the start of my career.
So then, you talked, literally, about the next day, people treated you a little bit differently.
Yeah.
When you go into high school and now your friends all know that this has happened, they're all on these apps.
Mhm.
You talked about some friends, seemed like almost wanted to connect with you for social media clout, and the people that used to be bullies were now trying to be pals. What was that like as a young age where people treat you differently for this thing that's not real life, but's affecting your real life?
It was absolutely crazy, the difference from one day to the next. One day, just casual, going to high school just like everyone else, and the next day, every single person that I walked by or sat by or anything, it was like moth to a flame. It was actually crazy how much attention and how many people suddenly knew about my about it. It was crazy how fast that spread, not just on the internet, but to my school and to group chats or to just people talking about it, and the word was spreading. It was so strange to have suddenly all this interest in me from people that never would have talked to me before that.
Yeah, I mean, you talk, in your book about The Truman Show, which is a movie we both loved, we watched together. You said that social media, when you're in that position, kind of feels like electronic paparazzi that you're feeding yourself. Have you ever felt kinda since then trapped by the camera you yourself are holding? I mean, you're feeding into this too. You're doing it. You're the one shooting it, but then, it also starts to feel like a pressure, and that's a lot for anybody to handle, much less a 16-year-old.
Yeah, definitely at the beginning, it's hard to balance and figure out what is worthy of sharing. Definitely some things where maybe I overshared at the time, trying to figure out what is a good amount of opening up to your audience and giving them something to connect to, and going too far and giving too much information or too much backstory on your health. And that's definitely like a fine line because it's very crucial my to be able to open up about health and things like that because that's my whole niche is giving people a safe space and helping other people with chronic illness, whether they have POTS like me, whether they have the same chronic illness or not, to be a safe space and a place for people to be able to give me and share with me their story and give them the tools that they need to better handle it.
I'm excited to talk more about that, and obviously, we don't wanna lock you into 16 forever. We're gonna get into where this goes in your life, but I wanna take a quick break to mention our partner, Indiana Wesleyan University, for this podcast. They know that whether you're studying business, nursing, or even design, like Karina did, who's an alumnus of IWU, your faith shouldn't be separate from your career. If you're looking for a university that cares about your character just as much as getting you credentials, check out discover.indwes.edu, INDWES for Indiana Wesleyan.edu. Okay, so I want to talk about the business side of all of this, Karina. So you have this, you go viral, you start to have tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, and eventually million and more followers. Um, and suddenly you're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to get a job at Burger King. I'll just make this my, high school job. And it's not just a summer job, it's something that you can keep doing. And you've written about how early on you were naive about how it all worked. But we'd love to hear kind of behind the curtain. How does it actually work? What are the goods and bads of it? What have you learned? What did you end up having to do you never thought you'd have to do in order to manage this new thing in your life that has upsides and downsides?
Yeah, right off the bat, it was very quickly I had to figure out what I was going to do because it's very easy to be a one day, 15-minute internet sensation and then never get remembered again. That's actually a lot more common than you'd think. So, in order to take something that happened accidentally and turn it into something really purposeful. And my career now for 6 years is really something I had to do within the first week. My mom helped me a lot in the first week in managing and helping with the huge influx of DMs and emails. I right away created a business email, and she encouraged me to do that to separate personal things from now the new business that wasn't expecting to have. And it was funny, she helped me with all the payments and the back end invoices, all of that, and making sure that my contracts were all good when I was signing them. And I would get payments through PayPal, and she would have to be the one to receive the payments because they didn't even have a PayPal yet because I
Well,
was
you didn't even have your
16.
driver's license yet, right? I
I
mean, you
did not
were
have
yeah,
my driver's license. No.
yeah.
I don't even think I had a phone. I don't did I have a phone? I don't even
Yeah,
remember.
you
I got it was like that year.
think you had just gotten a phone. You were late to getting a phone. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it
We
would have
held
been
you back a little from
a
that.
couple
Yeah.
months before that would have been getting
Yeah.
the phone, and then suddenly all this is going on. And then now I have signed with management a couple years ago in New York City, and they help me with all the back end. They do all my pitching the brands, negotiation, and they just come to me with what I have to do. I see if I read through everything and see if it's something I align with, and then I film all the content, and then they handle all the back end payments and everything. And that's been super helpful because for several years, all throughout high school and college, I was my own manager and managed all the emails, and it was, like, a lot of admin that I was doing when I was just, a teenager, early 20s, that now it's nice to not have to do all of that business end of things.
Yeah, so let's talk about the niches. I mean, in a way, you've talked about how algorithms force you into a box in a way as a consumer of social media and then someone who's an influencer. So you started talking about medical fainting, your experience. I mean, you didn't start that way intentionally. It's just something you
Yeah.
were being authentic and sharing it, and it just so happened that millions of people wanted to hear about it. But you're also an interior designer, media director. You've got all these different parts of your life you care about. How hard is it to pivot when the internet sort of forces you or pushes you, pressures you to want one thing? I mean, even your fans, your followers, they pressure you. What's that like from your end?
Yeah, and you'd think that and for most people, that's definitely the case, but I kind of have a loophole around that because I post all my medical issues, struggles, how to manage chronic illness, and be an advocate for that. But at the same time, anything else that I post that I want to post that's not within that medical niche is showing my lifestyle, beauty, health, and everything. But those people love to see those things with chronic illness because it inspires them that they can live outside of their chronic illness, so it kind of fits in still, even though I'm not directly talking about it. It gives them inspiration. "Oh, I can go to the store and do that by myself," like, that's an inspiration. Even if in the video I never once mention my chronic illness, they follow me and they feel connected to me, they might feel motivated or inspired that they might step out of their house and go do something with a friend or feel like they can have hobbies and interests that they wouldn't have probably thought about when with somebody with chronic illness. When a lot of times other pages with chronic illness sometimes get a little too down on the dumps and it's a
Yeah,
little too pity
I can
party
imagine.
and sad, and I try to keep it a lighthearted place to be and also inspiring to still live the life that you want. One of my taglines is not letting my condition stop me, and that kind of fits in anything that I'm gonna post about my condition, but then also within other niches, I can post within it because I'm not letting my condition stop me from posting beauty videos or lifestyle videos or travel videos or something like that. So it kind of broadens my
Yeah.
posting buckets, I guess.
So let me I know one thing people always think about when it comes to social media and our phones is just our mental health in general. You've talked about how some of the people you had followed at one time, their content actually triggered some insecurities in you. How does a young person or even an adult curate a feed that that heals our hearts rather than hurts us in our mental health and the other kinds of health. What are your tips for that, or what are things you've learned about that from your own experience on both ends of this?
Yeah, it's really important as a consumer of media to filter through what you're consuming. When you're seeing something that is making you feel insecure, filter it out. Block that account. Don't follow that account. You can always go and hold down on a video and say that you're not interested in that type of content, and the algorithm won't show you that anymore. The more things that you search that are not feeding off of your insecurities is going to be better and more helpful. And another thing is, if a lot of times you can feel this deep insecurity, and this is something that I would have struggled with in my teenage years, because a lot of influencers or sales is based on seeking out someone's insecurity. And that is a sales tactic that goes beyond just influencer marketing, but any kind of marketing. Oh, if you get this car, you're going to be that you're gonna have a higher status or something, and it's always just seeking after somebody's insecurity. So, when I was when you're younger and you're seeing, "Oh, if you buy this shirt, you might be more beautiful," and all of these things, you need to realize that's a sales tactic and that you're not actually not beautiful with the shirt that you already own, and making that distinguishing being able to distinguish that is really important, and knowing that you have the complete control over your algorithm to change it. And if you don't like what you're seeing, if it's hurting you, be aware of that and don't let it keep hurting you, and put in some rules in place on your algorithm and block things out so that you can protect your own peace.
Okay. Well, I've got you here on my your dad's podcast. You're trapped now. You have to answer a dad parent question. So I mean, I tried to navigate this with you when you're growing up. I know it was a little terrifying for me on what was happening, trying to figure it all out. I'm sure I missed the mark in dozens of ways, but looking back, what's something that you regarding phones or social media that I did that frustrated you in parenting? And then what's something that I maybe got right for those parents out there trying to deal with, or maybe they even have a kid that's just 6, 7, 8, and it's coming up for them. What's something you learned from your end as a kid going through it about parenting?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because in some ways, the thing that frustrated me at the time, I'm grateful for now, and it gave me some distance and mechanisms to not let it completely take over my life, even though now it's literally my job. And I am so grateful now that I didn't have a phone until I was 16. And I knew at the time I was frustrated, but now I look back and I'm just like so grateful. And I think for any parent who's thinking about withholding the phone or not, they're always going to push back, but then later is when they're going to thank you. They're never gonna see your side now when they're young. Later on, they'll see what you meant and appreciate it, because once those floodgates are open, you can't undo giving them the phone. I would I when we were young, or when you were when I was home with you, you would've taken all of our devices at the end of the night, and that drove me absolutely crazy. We would have to turn in, me and my siblings, our phone and our laptop and our iPad, and plug them in the hallway, and there was, like, a shelf with a million plugs, and at the time, that, like, drove me nuts because I wanted to have my phone in my room because it was my phone. But then looking back, I am so grateful that there was a separation from my phone and my room past 9 or 10 p.m. or whatever it was, and that was something that I'm grateful for now. There were parts of the parenting at the time where I wish that I wasn't allowed to have Snapchat until, well, I got it in college because there was no more rules.
Was no
At
longer in control.
Yeah, but I really do realize, like, at the time, that was a main communication source for being a kid, and I think I missed out on a lot of stuff that I never heard about friends' parties or gatherings, or I just missed out on a lot of that, where that's one thing I would have changed, but it's hard because at the same time, there's, like, a give and take with everything, but depending on at the same time, I'm glad I didn't have it at that age, and I think that was good, but there is a social aspect to where the communication app with the friends at someone's school is probably definitely a more high importance than letting your kid have, like, a feed-based app. Like, I would think a communication app is more important than, like, a doom scrolling app for your kid.
That's a good distinction. Yeah. Yeah, I think back at the time, I was hearing some horror stories about Snapchat in particular, and people, using stuff, especially for young girls.
Yeah.
But maybe looking back on it, the difference there between communicating with your friends as opposed to, uh, like you say, the scrolling, the feed-oriented apps. It's
Mhm.
interesting dynamic. Yeah, well, maybe what we could take for that is it's not gonna be fun, and maybe, kids are always gonna fight back on all of it, and every little thing feels like a battle, but maybe you win the war overall. Some of it's maybe just
Yeah.
learning limits. Whatever the limits might be, there needs to be some limits. There needs to be some boundaries, even if maybe the kids could maybe that's something I could have done is do more collaborating, like, what should the limits be? Like, let's talk through what limits are, because I
Mhm.
think sometimes when you're 14, 15, 16, it's like, "There should be no limits on me, I wanna do whatever I want." And maybe coming up with those together would have been an approach. Well, I do wanna take one more, break a moment and mention our other sponsor for this podcast, and that's Global Marketplace Multipliers. We'll get back to talking with Karina here in a second, but I wanna let you know if you've ever had a nudge to the nations, you might think you have to leave your career behind to answer that nudge. But GMM believes your professional skills are exactly what the world needs. So go to gponline.org/GMM, and that's for Global Marketplace Multipliers. You can find out more and watch a 1-minute video to hear an overview of how God could use both your faith and work in the global marketplace. So, speaking of faith and work, Karina, I want to ask you, you're a Christian, but the internet's a hard place for faith sometimes. And, you're a young person, you're emerging in what your beliefs are, in becoming your own, forming your own faith in a way. And you've mentioned in your writing that you've had to filter yourself now. But I've also noticed that you're open about reading the Bible in your feed, about going to church, about your faith. Even in that viral video, you talked about your faith. Your very first video about pots, you mentioned that went viral. So, how do you navigate sharing faith and your Christian values with this huge audience without getting canceled or dealing with toxic comments? How do you deal with all that?
Yeah, that's definitely just with everything else a balance. You don't wanna come off too strong, for those newer viewers, but then you don't want to pull back too much that your returning viewers are unsure where you stand. So I try to share whenever it's comfortable for me, whenever it fits in. I don't try to be too pushy or overbearing with it, but at the same time, I don't want to make it unclear that I'm a Christian. So I try to fit it in where it works and whenever something in my life or lifestyle is happening. Um, like if I'm already posting day in the life on a Sunday, well, I'm already going to church. So there we go. We already fit it in. Or an every morning routine, already reading my Bible, and then I could fit it in there. Um, and it's nice to kind of be able to share that and naturally and organically fit it into the content and not put too much of a pressure to make a dedicated video often. And sometimes from other Christian friends, I would get a little bit of pushback. Why is there not like a dedicated video discussing your faith every couple days or whatever? I'm like, well, it's a job just like any other job. And I think I have a good balance of organically including it into my life and sharing it where I can in the same way that any other job. If you're a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, you would organically fit it in and not. So it's been really great opportunity to share faith with a huge audience. Like it's you can't ignore how awesome that is. So I try to have a balance where it fits in and it piques curiosity, but it's not overwhelming and it doesn't stray away from the niche for the reason people are there in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Helpful, helpful. So maybe backing away from this, I mean, you've got, you're not old, you're a young lady, but you've got a lot of experience in this. Not a lot of people have the experience that you've had for as long as you had, even though you're still quite young.
Mhm.
You might have some wisdom just for a parent who's terrified of their kid getting a smartphone, or a teenager who kind of feels something's off about their social media
Mhm.
use. What's some advice you just give people in general about this, especially, considering this is actually a part, your livelihood, and it's been a big part of your life, but you haven't let it take over your entire life at the same time.
Yeah, something I've personally implemented with it being my job, but also in some ways for a lot of people our age, the third place, which is a something that I wish I put included in my book is third place, which is your home, your work, and then your third place. Where for years it would be the mall, the movie theater, whatever else, the hangout place, the skate park. And now it's people's phone. And that is a lot of people's way of connecting to others, but it's also the third place that they spend the final third of their time. And that's really something to keep in mind. And it's also a way that I connect with my friends and I don't live close to all my friends. And way that I control that while I also have it as my job and I don't want to have terrible work life balance is when I'm working on my phone, which is where I work in my office, which is where I am. But then if I'm just scrolling or with my friends or FaceTiming, I am somewhere else in my house. And it kind of creates a little bit of this distinguisher. And even with people that don't work on their phone, it's good to make some kind of distinguisher. So if you are wanting to scroll on your phone, have a certain place that you do that so that you're more like consciously aware you're doing it. If you're gonna FaceTime friends and have that be a time for connection, to do that in another certain place. And another tip is you can like download certain apps on your phone. You can get a brick if you've ever heard of that. It's like a little physical object that you have to click with your phone that locks you out of your apps. So you can use certain apps and not others, and it keeps your app usage at bay. And that's another way that you can limit your screen time. And I think it's also just most important to have good hobbies easily accessible in your house and around you so that you have other options than just playing on your phone and being able to do other activities to turn to instead of always just turning to your phone. That's definitely a helpful thing. Um, as far as parents, um, being as open and honest with your kids about the process and rules that you might have for them, but also as often as you can, giving other alternative activity options. It would always just help if I had a completely free Saturday growing up and or in late high school and I had no plans. And it would be so easy for me to literally be on my phone the entire day. And that's what ends up being so many teenagers' lives, being on their phone in their room, and that's their activity. And it would just be so nice when my mom's like, "Oh, do you wanna go shopping for a couple hours and get lunch?" Or just casually do something like that, or a friend would reach out, or something an activity with the family, watch a movie or do some kind of game. That already gives your kid another option. So whether or not they choose to spend their whole day on their phone, they have other options, and it's usually easier to take those on when those are your 2 deciding factors.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, so let me back away then and get your resume and your sort of life straight here. You've been an influencer, you've served, doing the digital media management for the spiritual formation ministry at Indiana Wesleyan, and you've got a degree in design for social impact. You love all that design type stuff. So adding that all together, your husband's still in school, in med school. So what does the future hold for you?
Well, I definitely love my current place being an influencer or content creator. It is such a blessing, and I really do love it, and I would love to do it as long as it's fruitful. But I also did go to school for interior design, and I love all things design, whether that's graphic design or interior design. And I also love all the things that I've learned through this job and content and digital marketing and communications, and all of that is all very fascinating. So I'm also looking to do something similar to kind of what I did at Indiana Wesleyan's spiritual formation office in marketing for some kind of organization might be something I would like to do, in addition to continuing to do content creation, um, as an influencer with my management. But I'm also really like interior design and interior decorating, so I'm kind of keeping options open and really excited to see where the future takes me.
Nice. Cool. Well, I know you've given me lots of good advice along the way. I know you know, I've actually done several different things with social media for myself. I know there was a certain season where I deleted all the social map apps off of my phone and only did things I could do on my laptop. There's other times when I created a little file where I would drag stuff in to a one file that just said nope. What was the name of the file on my phone? So that I had to actually like decide I need to go into that app
Yeah.
to do a very particular thing. And I put it off on like my fourth swipe on my phone so that I had to like search for it instead of it being the easy time waster.
Mhm.
Right now I have them all on my phone. I'm using them a lot in part to let people know about this podcast, but you've given me some great advice and lessons through the years. So I know other people have really enjoyed learning from you. And I clearly remember at one point Culver's actually contracted with
Yes.
you. If do you remember that? When
Yeah.
you had a contract with them to when you were, I think you were just a high school kid, you didn't even have your driver's license, and I drove you
I
to
know.
the meeting with these Culver's executives that flew into town to meet with you, and you did a consultation with them and got paid more as a consultant than I was getting paid for as a consultant at the time, and I was making good money. I was like, wow, this is crazy. You really have a lot of knowledge for a young person in this area. So thanks for being with us. I'm really proud of you, Karina. You go, girl. I'm excited about it. All you've got, all you've done, and all you've got in front of you. So, for you who are listening to this or watching, you can get Karina's book Influenced on her website, where you can also see her design work and stuff. That's karinainteriors.co, karinainteriors.co. And if you want to see some of her fun videos and more than a few puppy videos in the last year, she's at Karina Drury on TikTok and Instagram and over at YouTube as well. And that's Karina with a K, Karina Drury. She's got a new last name in real life because she's married now, but she kept my name for all this social stuff. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Not That Kind of Christian. If you like this episode, send it maybe to a parent or a teenager you know, or somebody that's interested in the stuff that Karina's talked about here. Guessing they might actually already follow Karina on the socials. It might be a good way to start a conversation with them. I'm your host, David Drury. You can find me as always at daviddrury.substack.com, where I write all the time, and you can watch this as a video podcast there or over on YouTube. Big thanks to Seth Strand, our producer who makes this podcast possible, and to our executive producer, Jamil Acevedo, the executive vice president of Wesley Seminary at Indiana Wesleyan University. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining.